So developing wall running was about as hard as I expected it to be, in that it was quite difficult. It did take me a couple of weeks, and I was worrying about it for a long time, mainly because I feel like a lot of this project hinges on whether or not the wall running feels good, being able to jump off and to and from different walls. So yeah, it was an important part of this project, and I'm glad that I focused a good amount of time on it. I struggled with it mainly because there weren't any decent tutorials that were about a third-person character wall running. There was a lot for first-person characters emulating games like Titanfall and the like, but not that many for third-person characters. So a lot of it was me trying to adapt other tutorials to suit my needs. So my logic from the beginning, or at least my idea of how to tackle this, hasn't really developed too much. That's because it worked, it just needed tweaking along the development path. And that logic is to give each individual wall a tag, which two sphere colliders at the side of the character, representing the left and right side of the character, can recognize. This tag is called on-wall. So when those spheres collide with something that has the on-wall tag, this allows us to trigger two very important booleans, two that you'll see cropping up a lot as I go through this system. And that are two booleans called on right wall and on left wall. On right wall is obviously triggered when the right side of the character overlaps with a wall, and on left wall is triggered when the left side overlaps with a wall. Probably the most important thing that these booleans do, first of all, is that it constrains the z-axis when we overlap with the wall. This means that when we do jump onto a wall, we're not just going to fall back down, because the z-axis, otherwise known as up and down, will be locked to that wall. As for the x and y axis, there are two smaller collision boxes near the hands of the player. Again, same setup with the left and right. I have this set up this way because I found that when I had all three of them on the giant sphere colliders, they would overlap with the wall, but then get stuck miles away. So what I want to happen, and what this setup allows to happen, is that the first overlap happens with the giant sphere colliders and locks the Z, and if they want to actually jump onto the wall, the player will move in close enough for the two smaller boxes to overlap, and at this point the player is close enough to this wall where we can set the player's velocity to the x and y to 0, and this will temporarily lock them to the wall and actually get them to stick. I also made a custom event for this called Reset Velocity on Wall. It asks the simple question, are we on the left and right wall? If that is true, and we are not pressing W, A, S, and D, it will reset the wall velocity and effectively stop the player moving on the wall. In the next video, we're going to be covering how I set up wall jumping.